Okay, it did that right away. That's nice. Yeah, I have a second laptop, but I might need to pull that one out soon because this one is slowly but surely just like dying a very,
Oh
very
man.
slow death. Um, yeah, let me just double check and make sure it's actually going live. Actually pull up Facebook, make sure it's going in. Ding. Okay. Told me everything was okay. It told me it's going live, but I don't see
Shows
it.
custom live streaming.
Mhm. Um,
Everything I do feel like is delayed in Facebook whenever I go live. hmm
it is what it is. It's got yeah, it is not saying that we like it says we're live, but I'm not seeing the live feed. What is happening? Why is
It
that?
it may just take a little bit.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's my
I've done it where I'm like asking questions. I'm like, hey, drop a yes in the chat for whatever. And it'll be like 45 seconds before I'll see the very first one. And I'm like, oh, okay.
um
Technology.
yep, always always reliable, right? It's always like 10 out of 10
hmm
reliable. Yeah.
Until it's not.
Yeah, but even then it is because that's what 10 out of 10 reliable means, right? I'm
Yeah, true.
just going to refresh the page.
Okay.
If it'll even do that. uh, cool. Oh, okay. I see us. I see us, but now I just got to do a sound check. Yes. Okay,
Okay,
cool. We are live.
awesome.
It is working. Yay. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for being patient with that because I know that's a pain in the butt.
Of course.
So yeah, hello everybody who's going to be tuning in the replay. Hello. Yeah, just let us know if you're watching this live or if you're watching this down watching the replay. Just let us know down below. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in as well so that we can get those at the end. With that being said, hello Claire, welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
So
Appreciate the invite.
so let's just kind of start. Who are you from the moment you were born to this moment right now? Who are you?
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to bore you guys with all of that. But yes, I've been in the fitness, nutrition, coaching space in some capacity. I feel like most of my life, but um, it's just been my calling. It's been a part of who I am, and I love it. I've shifted at this to this space and time. I've worked with every walk of life. I've worked in every facet of gym training, boot camps, group X. I mean, you name it, all across the board. And this stage, this phase of life is I've shifted much more to working with women my age, 40 and older, that are in the perimenopause kind of menopause phase of life, and really just from my own journey of dealing with a lot of hormone issues over the past 10 years, and navigating that with not a lot of direction, because there's just a lot of stuff out there that can feel very overwhelming and not really sure where to go with. So I've kind of just had my own journey of experimentation and really just navigating what that process looks like for myself. And so, kind of at this phase, now I'm able to really work and hone in with a lot of women on their own hormone journeys and their own metabolic restoration journeys, and really just getting tapped into it not just being about the vanity side of things and losing weight or fat loss, but really just about gaining strength from a holistic perspective. Fat loss kind of comes with that usually, but really looking at it from the whole self, from the physical to the emotional to the mental, the spiritual, everything across the board. So
Mhm.
that's kind of in a nutshell with what I do now. But I've definitely worked in a lot of facets across the board, and I'm just really grateful that I get to walk this journey with so many women now.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's always the thing is like you can make all the physical changes you want, but if the mind doesn't change with those physical changes, um then it tends to backfire and tends to not doesn't last. And that's always the challenging part, because the ego is kind of a pain in the butt, and it doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to think about things that suck. It wants to protect you at all costs. So it's like, hey, we're just going to ignore everything that's uncomfortable, and we're just going to kind of keep moseying on forward. Oh, look, you're down 20 pounds, but now you're back up 20 pounds.
Right. Or you're down 20 pounds, but you still see the 20-pound heavier self in the mirror.
Yes. Oh God.
And
Yeah. That
you don't know
one's
how to
huge.
undo. Yeah. And yeah, it's men, I'm sure the same way. I can only speak from the women's perspective because I am a woman, but I feel like we're just our own worst critic in
Mm-hmm.
ways that are so like, I would never speak to my clients the
Oh
way
yeah.
that well, I've spoken to myself over the years.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that a lot of that is like when I first lost my 80-ish pounds. I think it was like 80, 85 pounds. I was the same way. Like I went from 250 pounds, which as a like 5'7" person, that's a quite a chunky white boy. And I went down to 165, and I had like 8-pack veins on my abs. And I was like, then it clicked, because I'm like, man, still not satisfied. I need to go more. Wait a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
Hold on. I didn't even know veins on the abs was a thing. That's how lean I am. And I'm still
Yeah.
not satisfied, because
Mm,
every time I looked in the mirror, I still just saw the 250-pound version of myself.
yeah.
So yeah, 100% get it.
Yeah. Hard.
Cool. Well, today you are talking about, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you said 8 practical tips for managing menopause. So
Oh,
let's the floor is yours.
awesome.
Let's get this rolling.
I appreciate it. Awesome. And welcome everybody that is joining live, that's watching this, the replay of this. I first off just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your life to listen to this, to be a part of this. Your time is valuable, and I'm just honored and very grateful that you're here. And my hope by the end of this is to genuinely impart some actionable things that you can take into your day today that you can put into practice that will actually help you move the needle, whatever your goals might be, and just be able to actually put something into practical application. So before we dive in, I kind of want to set the stage. And so just follow along with me, humor me as I kind of go through this little piece. But I want you to just like think deeply for a second. Don't close your eyes if you're driving, obviously, or cooking, but I want you to think, what is it in me, yourself? This is you asking you, what is it within yourself that you are looking for, that you tend to look for like outside of yourself, something that you're missing on the inside? What incredible, strong, beautiful pieces of you and your journey do you possess that have somehow gotten you to this place in life right now? What are pieces of you and your journey that maybe you're not super proud of, that you find yourself dwelling on way more often than the beautiful pieces, the strong pieces of who you are? And these are all rhetorical questions, but just something to think about. We're going to be talking today about really tangible components, that tangible component that is truly making an impact on your ability to get strong and to lose weight or lose, that fat loss that you're looking for. But I really want to set the stage in your mind before we dive into that, because it's not just about, like what Chris and I just mentioned, it's not just about losing the weight. It's not just about gaining strength or feeling sexy in your clothes or when you're naked, or, not hiding in sweatpants, or, attempting to find some magical hormone solution that's never going to make you age, right? Like it's not about that. But all of those desires, all of those like, but Claire, like I want that. All of those things stem from the root of why they matter to you in the first place. And it comes back to acceptance, self-approval, and self-love. And I'm not going to get too deep into the woo-ness or whatever, but this is truly truly a huge component. The mindset and how we see and visualize and experience ourselves, the lens through which that we look at ourselves. So the way that you choose to see yourself, the way that you choose to speak about yourself, how you feel about yourself, and then the actions that we take each day, like these are direct reflections of our self-acceptance, our self-love, and self-approval. And or not. Oftentimes it tends to be not, right? So I want you to think back. Can you think back to the last time that you actually fully looked at yourself when you got out of the shower? Okay. In the mirror, like you get out and get your towel. Or do you tend to be someone who avoids that image? Like you get out, you wrap your towel, you're like, oh, I'm just not gonna look at that mirror, right? And I'm curious. I want to just pose the question to you. That beautiful being that is staring back at you, why is it that she deserves shame? Why is it that the avoidance is there? And again, rhetorical questions, but think about them in your head. I want you to also think about all the incredible things that that woman that is staring back at you, think about all the incredible things she's done in her lifetime that has gotten you to here, to this point in life right now. Maybe she took on the important role of birthing children, right? Birthing and raising children. That's a pretty big deal. Maybe she stayed up late nights alongside a dying loved one, or drove from one side of the country or state to another because a friend needed her. These are all beautiful and amazing pieces of who you are. Maybe she got turned down for a job until like time after she persevered through it, right? Maybe she battled a serious illness that left her contemplating existence on this earth, but she made it through that. She resolved to not give up, and she's here right now. Maybe she found herself in a place of like anxiety or fear, or depression or anger. I know I've been there, but I've lived through that, and you have lived through it to bring yourself to this space right now, here and now. So, what have you been through that is part of your journey and is the reason that you are everything you've been through is the reason that you are here today? And if you hadn't gone through those parts of your journey, like we wouldn't all be here together right now. So, those beautiful strings of experiences are what has led us to this place in this time. Chris and I would not have met as friends if I hadn't gone through the things that I've gone through, and same for him and his journey, right? So we tend to be our own worst critic, like we mentioned earlier, but I just want you to think about the beautiful string of experiences that you have gone through that have created this being that you are and made you the strong and beautiful and amazing person that you are. So my ask from you as we dive into this is I just want you to hold a space for remembering that part of who you are, this beautiful, strong, amazing person that you are. And just to remember that you insert your name, Claire, Betty, whoever, that you are you today, right now, moving forward. You are not you 4 weeks ago. You're not you 4 months ago or 14 years ago. So when we try to like live our best life back in our 20s, like that's not who we are today. And that's okay. That's a beautiful thing. And I'm going to tell you why. So let's dive into the science piece of things. Let's talk about the stages of life and hormones. All right. So menopause, just to kind of give like some framing real quick. So menopause is basically you're in menopause once you've completed 1 full year of not having periods anymore. Okay. Perimenopause are the years that are leading up to that 1 year where your hormones fluctuate. The time frame between your periods tends to shorten. And for some of us, it's a short amount of time that we're in perimenopause. And for others, it can be years, 6, 10, 11, 12 years. All right. And then let's kind of talk about the science when it comes to our hormones. So women have 3 types of cells on the follicles on our ovaries. I'm not going to get too nitty gritty, but just so you kind of have some framing on this. But one of those cells is responsible for the release of testosterone and other androgens. One of those cells is responsible for the release of estrogen, and then one's responsible for the release of progesterone. And here's the deal: is we're born with all of our follicles, and eventually they're going to run out. It's just means, they're going to slowly stop producing, our bodies slowly start producing these hormones. And it's just a part of the natural life cycle. But it isn't just an on and off switch, especially in those perimenopause years. They're going to fluctuate. Some days we're going to have lots of estrogen production, and other days we're going to have little to none. And this, my dear, is why you tend to feel really good certain days, and then other days you want to set the world on fire. Things tend to bother you 10 times more than they did last week or a few days ago. And we end up in like these dips and these valleys. It's kind of like this emotional roller coaster that we feel like we're on. And it can legit make us feel crazy. I know I've been there. I'm sure many of you have as well. And what we want to do is we actually want to minimize those highs and lows. And you might be sitting there thinking, like, wait, that's a thing? Like, I can get off of that, like, emotional, what makes me feel like a psychopath roller coaster? Yes, absolutely. And so we want to mitigate, we want to minimize those highs and lows, so your symptoms can seem less extreme, so that they are less extreme. And by doing that, side effect tends to be weight loss, tends to be fat loss, tends to be muscle gain. All right. So the focus, the key here is the lovely word cortisol. I'm sure you guys have heard it. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, especially for us in this like 40 plus stage of life. So when cortisol is high, cortisol, by the way, that's our stress hormone. And when cortisol is high, it's going to negatively influence our estrogen levels. It decreases our progesterone levels, and it can mess with a lot of other things in our systems, like increasing insulin resistance and increasing inflammation. It can decrease thyroid function, and it can decrease the efficientness of our digestive system. So you may notice more bloating, more constipation, just kind of like this constant like distendedness. And ultimately, all of these things are going to lead to belly fat accumulation and the fluctuation of our hormone symptoms. So plus, as we age continuously, our estrogen levels decrease. I mentioned that earlier, but as our estrogen levels are decreasing, our stress tolerance is already reduced, and estrogen is actually our stress buffer. That is our lovely little like cloud bubble when it comes to dealing with stress. We had a lot of it, plenty of it in our teens, 20s, and 30s. But as we age, as we hit this 40 stage and onward, our estrogen is decreasing. So our buffer for handling stress is also being minimized. So it's really important to understand that, because you're not crazy. This is a real thing. It's like, okay, I'm not able to handle stress the way that I used to from a physiological standpoint. Recognizing that from an emotional and a cognitive standpoint says, okay, now what can I do to minimize those, my response or my reaction to this stress? So here we are. We're going to talk about the 8 steps, and I'm going to kind of dive into each of them after I list them out. So what can you do to lower cortisol levels and get your place in a little bit more of that homeostasis spot? 1 is you can eat enough food. 2, you can eat enough carbs. I know, carbs are not the devil, by the way. 3, prioritizing sleep. 4, limit alcohol. I said limit. I did not say get rid of. Okay. 5 is limit the caffeine intake. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, but especially limiting that caffeine intake like after the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock p.m. time frame, and definitely not on an empty stomach. I'll talk about that in a minute. 6 is you want to adjust your training, how you're working out. Cardio and like excessive amounts of cardio and HIIT workouts daily, high intensity exercises. Those are going to increase cortisol production. They're meant to. Exercise is a stressor. It's a positive stressor when it's done right. But these higher intensity workouts day after day after day is not ideal for this stage of life. You want to try opting for more strength training workouts where you have longer rest periods. Give your body the ability to recover before taking on the next demand, the next round of whatever it is that you're doing. Number 7, no fasting. What? Claire, I thought like intermittent fasting is the magical solution to all the things. No, it's not. Unfortunately, at this stage of life, it's not the most ideal. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then de-stressing. De-stressing seems like, yeah, whatever. Okay, stress management. It's a legit thing that is so, so imperative. 2 of my absolute favorite suggestions when it comes to de-stressing. Middle of the day, you feel your kids are screaming, you're trying to do work, you feel like you're putting out fires every 5 seconds. 1 is just shut yourself in the bathroom. If you're at work, if you're at home, whatever it might be, close the door, phone away, put earplugs in if you need to, and literally just breathe. Like slow, controlled. You can do box breathing. You don't have to have a structure to it, but just slow, deep, as deep of an inhale as you can take. hold it for 4 or 5 seconds, and then as slow of an exhale as you can give. And do that even 3 breaths like that will shift you out of the fight or flight stress response and put your body into the parasympathetic nervous system response, which is rest and digest. The other suggestion, I have a lot of my women do this, is to lay on the floor with their feet up the wall. Take the blood out of the feet, out of the legs, bring it back to the center of the body, and just breathe for even 5 minutes. You can set an alarm on your phone and just relax. Again, that will also do the same thing for the parasympathetic nervous system. But let's break down these 8 tips. So if you have a pen and paper and want to jot these down as I go through, great. So number 1, let's talk about eating enough food. So maybe I'm probably not the only one thinking about this. Back in the day, we've heard, work out more and eat less, like, calories in versus calories out. Like, I've got to be in a quote unquote caloric deficit at all times to like lose weight, right? In our 20s, that probably worked really well. I know in my teens and 20s, like I would like starve myself for the week leading up to an event so I could like feel amazing in my dress. And that worked well at that point in life. However, this stage of life, the worst thing that we can do is undereat. So when we're eating low calorie, and medically that calorie range is about 1,600 calories. So medically, 1,600 calories is considered low calorie. So if you're eating low calorie under that 1,600 range, give or take, for more than 12 weeks, you're going to actually slow down your metabolism. Okay. You should not be dieting year round because your body will actually decrease the calorie output function from the inside. It's going to actually decrease the amount of energy it expands. So you're no longer going to be in a calorie deficit once you're past that like 8 to 12 week period of time. So you really want to focus on eating enough, like in your maintenance range, eating enough calories to support your system for strength functioning, or strength gains, putting on muscle. That should be your base kind of foundation. Then you can look at moving into a fat loss phase. And I'm sure those of you in Chris's group, like I know he harps on this and making sure you're eating enough food before putting yourself into a calorie deficit, and then making sure that that calorie deficit is done in a safe and supported way. Number 2 is eat your carbs, ladies. Eat your carbs. Like, they are not the enemy, especially at this phase of life. We need them. Not eating enough carbs can actually increase our cortisol production. And so we really want to focus on supporting our system, supporting our whole system. Our brain needs glucose, it needs carbohydrates. And one of my favorite kind of like tips is at nighttime, if you struggle to fall asleep and stay asleep, if you incorporate a small snack about 30-45 minutes before bed of a slow digesting carbohydrate. I like to do oatmeal sometimes. I like to do rice cakes with some jelly and some peanut butter on it. You can do cheese and crackers if you're not lactose intolerant, obviously, but having a small protein and slow digesting carbohydrate snack about 30-45 minutes before bed will tremendously help you fall asleep and stay asleep. Not always, but it helps very often because it's actually allowing your body to come into that rest and digest state. It lowers the cortisol levels. It also allows your body to begin producing melatonin to kind of shift you into that like go to sleep state. Number 3, we're talking about prioritizing sleep. Prioritizing sleep sounds like, oh, yeah. But I have kids. It's impossible. It's not impossible. I promise you, there are things that you can do, very simple things like the slow digesting carbohydrates before bed. Also, not looking at this guy 60 minutes to 90 minutes before going to bed. I have to catch myself with that because I notice on the nights that I am on my phone more often than not, I struggle to fall asleep. My brain just stays in this like dopamine hit place. And so it's really important, like turn the TV off, turn the phone off, like don't look at those things before going to bed. When we're not sleeping, we are not going to lose weight. If our bodies are not able to get into rest and digest and get into a place of actual healing, recovering, repairing, regenerating. That's what we do. Sleep. All right. When we're not able to get to that place, our bodies are not ever going to let go of the excess fat or the weight loss that we're looking for, because it's going to be in a constant place of like, girl, I am trying to just keep you alive right now. So it's really, really important that we are focusing on getting adequate sleep. It's not going to happen every night, babe. Like, I get that. But when you think about it more often than not, that's really how we can support our bodies. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Protein. Making sure that you're getting in enough protein is very important. I know Chris probably talks about this as well, but protein is going to help preserve muscle mass. And as we age, as women, we want to preserve that muscle mass. Our body, as we age, tends to get rid of our muscle, unfortunately, as we age. And so we really want to do everything we can to hold on to that muscle mass. It's going to keep our body strong. It's going to keep them safe. It's going to keep them in a more quote unquote fat burning place, the more muscle mass that we have on our bodies. It's going to help with metabolism as well. When we talk about workouts and the type of training that we do, I mentioned like resistance training is focusing on getting stronger is going to be such a benefit for you. As females, we tend to just want to focus on the lose weight. I don't love my belly. I wish my arms looked like this, XYZ. If we can shift our focus more on, I want to work on getting stronger. I want to work on moving effectively and efficiently in my movements, mobility, yoga, Pilates. These are all really great things to incorporate. They're low impact, but they help our bodies to move efficiently. And then also the resistance training combination really helps our bodies long term be the most supported that they possibly can be. It helps with our balance. It helps with our proprioception, like how we function in space, the stronger that we are. And once estrogen drops, we do see a decrease in our ability, like I mentioned, to build and maintain muscle. So you want to make sure that you are incorporating resistance training and then adequate protein. They go hand in hand. And one of the other things too, when you are doing resistance training, is maybe back in the day, you would do like 5 rounds of whatever and just boom, 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 back to back. Give yourself those adequate rest. 2 to 3 minutes between sets of lifting weights is very, very beneficial for our systems. And then lastly is stop fasting. Okay. Claire, but fasting worked for like Bob in the office that I work in, or like I did it 10 years ago and it was amazing. I get it. I've been there too. I've done it as well. But right now at this stage and phase of life, fasting during the stage is very stressful on the body, especially if you're already under eating. Again, that 1600 calorie or under, some of us, it's maybe more 1500. That's considered too low or very low calorie. If we're already doing this low calorie thing, and then on top of that, we're like, well, I'm going to intermittent fast twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever. You're telling your system, like, you're not safe. I don't have you. I'm not supporting you. And that your body is going to go into a place of like only focusing on keeping you alive in the best way that it can. It's not going to focus on getting rid of excess fat. It's not going to focus on gaining muscle, that's for sure. And so it's important at this stage of life that we support our bodies by feeding it enough, giving it the right types of training, resistance training, and then adequate protein. Like they definitely all like kind of go hand in hand. And the cool thing too is when you're not fasting, when you're actually serving your body well, you're not going to add insult to injury by increasing cortisol. In fact, it's going to reduce cortisol when you're able to support your system from a holistic standpoint. So I hope that makes sense. A couple little bonus tips that I'll just kind of throw out there for you guys is veggies. I know veggies, they're amazing, but they're full of nutrients. They really do help in keeping our bodies feeling full. They balance our blood sugars, improves gut health and inflammation, and it helps with our metabolism across the board. So incorporating vegetables is very important. Aiming for like 2 to 3 servings of veggies a day. And I know some other people or places, they may say, oh, you need a lot more than that. But in the world that we live in now, I find for most women, whether you have children, you work a full-time job, whatever, aiming for 2 to 3 servings is a realistic way or realistic goal to aim for. Water, drink water, y'all. I know again, that seems like, yeah, whatever. But truly, water, it helps with your digestive system. I have a friend who recently, just kind of a side story, recently traveled overseas. And the only thing she had control over while she was there really was the amount of water that she was intaking. Food, she was on a mission trip. So like food was allotted and she just had to deal with what she had to deal with. She said the one thing that helped with her digestion was the fact that she was able to drink adequate water each day. Other people that were in her group didn't, and they had so many, let's just say, digestive issues. It was, yeah, she was like, I made sure I had all my, water intake each day. And it was the only thing that like kept her like her gut sane,
Yep.
and others did not. So, and then having a pre-workout snack and a post-workout snack. Yes, I'm like condoning eating food. What? Yeah. But having a pre-workout snack that, and there's time frames, but even if it's just 30 minutes before your workout, having a quick grabbing carbohydrate type of snack, piece of fruit, piece of toast, something your body can use as fuel relatively quickly is very important. Um, It'll maximize your time in the gym. And then a post-workout snack is also very important. And again, this is not necessarily maybe in your 20s, but now at this stage of life, we need to sandwich, no pun intended, our workouts with something before and then afterwards. That is afterwards, definitely with our protein source, because we want to bring those cortisol levels down. Exercise is a stressor. It stresses our bodies in a positive way if done well. But we want to not leave our systems in this high cortisol state. We want to work on bringing that cortisol level back down so it doesn't stay elevated at all times. And then the last little tip, I talked about coffee, not drinking coffee on an empty stomach, especially first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Super simple. Rise in the morning. And if you're like, Claire, I don't function without coffee in the morning, I get it. Totally. Have something to eat with it. It could be as simple as a piece of toast. It could be as simple as a piece of fruit. Even having your breakfast, like eat your breakfast with your coffee. Do not do coffee on an empty stomach. When we rise in the morning, typically our cortisol levels are elevated. They should be. That's how the cycle of life. At nighttime, they should be low, and in the morning, they should be high. It's not always the case for everybody, but they should be. And so when you're waking, not only are they already elevated, you've also already been in a fasted state for the time you were sleeping. And now you're adding insult to injury by drinking caffeine first thing in the morning. You're putting your body in a stressed, it's already in a stress state, and then you're putting it in an even more stress state. And then chances are you're probably fasting in the morning and not eating breakfast. Like, one thing you take away from this right now, if you're someone who does that, is okay. I promise you, your body is going to thank you for that. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
feel so much better. You're going to have a better cognitive function. You're going to feel just so much better and set up for the day. It may take you a little bit to get used to that, but I promise you, it will make a world of difference. So I hope that these are helpful. I hope that even if you just take one thing from these 8 steps, these 8 tips to implement, you don't have to implement all of them, but what was one thing that really stood out to you that you can start incorporating, and just incorporate one of them at a time until it becomes something that you do more often than not, and share it with your group, share it with Chris, share it with me. I would love to know if there was something that was really helpful for you. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. That was all awesome. The man, the wombo combo of fasting with with having the already higher cortisol levels because your cortisol resilience has gone down. So your cortisol resilience has gone down, then you're fasting, and then the coffee in the morning, plus the aversion to carbs. It's oh man.
It's like the perfect storm
It
for
is.
lack of fat loss. Perfect storm
Yes.
for the crazy train is what I typically call it. The emotional crazy train. And it doesn't, I think the hardest part, I know for me and several of the clients that I've worked with, I think the hardest part is wrapping our brains around that, because we tend to, society tells us whatever, like go mode,
Yeah.
like on the run, coffee throughout the day to like carry us through the day.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have time to eat, whatever. And it's the perfect storm for making us feel like a crazy person, especially as women at this stage of life.
Mhm.
And wrapping our brains around like it's safe and okay and suggested to take a step back, to breathe deep, to slow down, to eat food, to eat carbs.
Mhm.
And then when we feel that and we actually experience that and our bodies go like, it is amazing. But you have to actually experience it first to
Yes.
really like get it,
Yeah,
especially
that's
if you haven't done that in a long time or ever.
an analogy I use a lot. It's called the dirty windshield analogy,
Mm,
where it's like most people don't know what it's like because they've never experienced it. And until they experience it, they can't say anything about it. So imagine you're driving, you've gone your entire life driving with a dirty windshield. And everyone's like, just clean your windshield. It's so much better. Just clean your windshield. It's so much better. And you're just like, no, this is normal. This is fine. This is just how I've always done it. It's worked just fine for me. Then you finally clean your windshield and you're like, oh my God, life is
yeah.
tremendously better. Why did no one tell me about this?
Yep.
And then you notice every single little splat bug that hits that windshield after you've cleaned it, and you're like, no. And that's what happens is like when you clean up the lifestyle and you actually clean up these things, you then like I had actually had a conversation with this morning with a client where she was doing really good for like 4 weeks and then went to Wendy's just on an off day. Just forgot to go grocery shopping. Didn't It was a long day at work. Didn't have what it took to cook. So she's like, I'm just gonna get Wendy's. And she felt like a turd today.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, this was my normal for so long.
Yeah.
And yeah, most people feel like that, and their standard, their mental standard has dropped to that point where it's like this is what normal feels like. They don't, and then they've kind of forgotten or they don't know what it feels like to just clean up the windshield and see the light, kind of thing.
Yeah.
um,
I hear that conversation a lot, or I hear that type of statement from a lot of women when it comes to being tired. Oh, it's just my age. It's just hormones. I'm just,
mm-mm,
you know,
mm-mm,
that shouldn't be, that isn't the norm. It
no.
is, it, it is the norm, but it's not okay. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Um, and, and tiny little tweaks, tiny little fixes really can make a difference. And again, I always go back to, I say the statement a lot with my gals is like it, finding the thing, the habit that you can work on, that you can make it a part of your day, your week, your existence more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that it's 100%
Yeah.
like, I mean, I forget to brush my teeth sometimes at night, but like, I'm not saying scrap it. I'm just never going to brush my teeth again.
I
Or this
guess I'll just
week is,
start over again on Monday.
yeah, like, what? No, I'm going to brush my teeth in the friggin' morning, like,
Yeah.
and it seems like such a trivial thing, but it's the exact same thing with all of these small little habits that we can incorporate. It doesn't mean we need to do them all at once,
Mm-hmm.
but they're helpful. But if there's one thing that stands out to you, like, okay, I'm going to work on that thing because I think
Yeah.
that might be the thing that helps me the most. Maybe it's not fasting in the morning, it's eating with my coffee. Do that until it becomes like a thing that like makes sense and you do it more often than not. And then now you've seen the light. Now you've seen through the windshield, right? And now that awareness is there and you can't unlearn it. Like it's a part of who you are and it's part of what you do. And then you take on another thing.
Yeah. Something I really wanted to touch on with the carbohydrate thing. Because this is huge. It's still a thing where a lot of women are still so like condemning carbohydrates and that they're the problem. It's kind of like you were talking about earlier, where eating carbohydrates brings down stress because insulin is the shutoff valve to cortisol.
Right.
Your body knows that. So when you're going through menopause and you're having like these insane over the top nighttime cravings for sugary and sweets, that's actually your body saying, hey, I'm stressed. Go do something about it. And then you add on more stress by going, no, carbs bad. Until eventually the only thing, and what you, annoyingly as well, what you focus on is the thing you're telling your brain is important to think about. So if all you're thinking about is don't eat carbs, guess what the only thing you're going to be thinking about is?
I want.
Carbs.
Yeah.
So, and we know willpower is finite. Like eventually you're going to give in. At some point, it's like holding a beach ball under the water. Eventually your arm's going to get tired and it's going to explode in your face.
Yeah.
Or you can just slowly release the pressure, give in, like lean into that response, knowing that carbohydrates do that, and be like, okay, right now I'm craving ice cream, Oreos, whatever. And I'm really stressed. Got it. So I can actually satisfy that craving by just having some rice,
Yeah.
having a
Or
potato.
something, a piece of fruit. Maybe it's not,
Yes.
or call me crazy, Chris, but maybe it's, I'm going to have an Oreo,
Yes.
but like one,
That's
but
something that I've been.
recognize in that moment, like you penned it when you said, I'm having cravings and what is it connecting to? How am I also feeling in this moment?
Mhm.
I'm freaking stressed right now.
Yeah.
Like my kid just yelled at me and whatever. I'm going to have that Oreo. I'm going to have one. But then also recognize, like, is this my 8th night in a row that I feel like I need to have an Oreo? Like, oh, okay. It becomes a pattern, right?
Yeah.
Telling yourself, like you said, like telling yourself, like, I can't have the thing. Maybe it's having the thing.
Yep.
Okay. Paying attention to when you're doing it, why you're doing it. And then how can I set myself up to not fall into that trap tomorrow or later,
Yes.
right? And sometimes just like I need to have the thing. Like I'm
Yeah.
listening to what my body's trying to tell me. Doesn't mean
That's
you need to eat the whole sleeve. Probably
yeah.
not.
That's something that I've been talking a lot about lately to as often as I can, is that sometimes the answer is having the thing, but making it a conscious choice, not an unconscious reaction to the emotions you're feeling.
Yes.
If
Mm.
it, because if you because the outcome is the same, but the intent going into it changes your everything. Because if you're going like, I'm super stressed, I'm sad, I want to not feel sad, so you want to know what's good? Ice cream. So I'm going to go have ice cream to avoid the bad feelings I don't want to feel anymore. And then I'm going to feel, then once you're done the ice cream, you're like, oh, that was really good. And then you feel like trash, both physically because you forgot you're lactose intolerant. Okay. Uh, but then you also like mentally, you're like, oh, why did I do that? Oh God, I'm such a failure. Why is this so hard? And like you start beating yourself up over it. But if you go into it and be like, man, I'm really stressed. I'm really feeling like that Oreos and ice cream. Do I feel like I want to eat this Oreo and ice cream because I just need to feel good right now? Or am I trying to, or am I going to gravitate towards like making a conscious choice to be
Yep.
like, I'm going to have this because man, my day has like shit hit the fan today. And I just need something to delicious to just feel good.
Right.
That is different than, oh my God, get me away from this scary feeling.
Right.
So
Yep.
even though it's the same outcome, you're still eating the food. It's like, this is where the idea of like, you can eat whatever you want,
Yeah.
but it's
I
like, yeah.
I had this, literally before this session, I was on a client check-in with a gal and we talked pretty in depth about this. And I was telling her about, this is like such a nugget that I think is so important to understand. It's science fact, is the chemistry in our brain when we are in an emotional, when we're feeling emotions that are uncomfortable, that we don't enjoy, vulnerability, anger, uh, you know, frustration, fear, like all these things that are like icky, right? Um, if you have like electrodes or you're in MRI, the UCLA did studies on this. The amygdala, the part of the brain, and the called the amygdala, when you're experiencing emotions that are uncomfortable, that are not
Mm,
happy emotions, it lights up. I mean, it
yeah.
lights up. The shift that you can do is literally, you feel experience the emotion. If you, I call it scream it or scribble it. If you write it down, what the feeling is, you give it voice, you give it like words in an outward, in an outward projection, either through your mouth or like writing it down, writing out what that feeling, what that emotion is. That part of the brain, the amygdala, shuts down, like
Mm,
it quiets.
mm,
And so you go from fight, flight, freeze to rest and digest. It's a 90-second cycle. If you can make it through that 90 seconds of that roller coaster, right? Of like, I'm stressed and I need this thing in this now. Give it words, write it down. Like, okay, here's how I'm feeling. And it doesn't have to be a woo woo thing. It's literally like pissed. I want Oreos, like whatever. Give it 90 seconds, take a deep breath, and then intentionally say, I still kind of want that Oreo. Like, I think I'm still going to eat, a couple bites of that ice cream versus, like you said, the reaction of like, oh, I just want to like numb the
Yeah.
thing, the feeling, the emotion. I want to get away from that. Give it some voice and wait 90 seconds and then make an intentional decision at that point. And it is amazing how a different lens, cleanness of that windshield, you see that decision. And sometimes it's a matter of like, yep, okay, I'm still going to do the thing. And then
Yeah.
other times it's like, I'm good actually,
Yeah, but one of them is giving in control and the other one is taking control. And that's the thing.
Mhm.
Like if you feel like you're in control of your own decisions around whatever foods that you're eating, it's a lot easier and it feels good because using again a client I've already talked about is that when she went to Wendy's because she had those cravings, didn't want to cook, super stressed, et cetera, because she just made that conscious choice to do it, she didn't even eat the whole burger.
Right.
But if you're trying to bury an emotion, you're going to eat as much food as you can to bury it down deep and never see it again.
Right.
But if you make it a conscious choice, you might get just halfway through what you were maybe planning on it and be like, you know what? That was good. I'm
Yeah.
good now.
And I'm
I'm
okay. Yeah.
satisfied. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's a huge one. And I think it's man, I've done so many lives on just stress. One of my favorite kind of I guess realizations lately about stress is the way that because like you mentioned, we live in a society where now it's all go, 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 go. Um, Thinking back like 10,000 years ago, right? Say you have person A and person B. They go out hunting so they can bring food back to the tribe. Person A shoots bow at deer, misses. Person B shoots bow at deer and hits. In that moment, person A is feeling vastly inferior to person B. In
Right.
that moment, they're going, oh my God, like I practice, I try, I do everything right, and I still missed. I still failed. If it wasn't for this person who's infinitely better than I am, my family would starve. I am a failure. What's wrong with me?
Mhm.
Very, very common emotions that people now still feel. The difference is that in those moments back in the day, we then had to spend the next 3 hours carrying that to our tribe, processing what just happened.
Yeah.
We no longer have that because of the society we now live in. This is why, this is at least this is my theory. This is why things like shower thoughts exist, where people have big, huge revolutions in the shower. It's because it's the one time of the day where you sat down with zero distractions. It's just you and your own thoughts
Yep.
because you never actually took the time to do it. And then it's also the same reason why people will stay up hours at night just staring at the ceiling, being like, my brain just won't shut up. It just keeps going and going because you never took the time to integrate the experience of the day into your mind. And so when you finally ran out of distractions, your brain's like, all right,
Time to
buckle up because
process
we got some stuff to
it.
talk about.
Yeah.
You're not
Yep.
gonna like it. You're gonna get tired. You're not sleeping tonight, but hey, maybe you should have slowed down a bit.
Right.
And that's a huge part of it. Is and like you said, scribble it, journaling, huge. I'm a really big fan of journaling.
Yeah.
I talk about it all the time. Another thing that's been huge lately is in those moments of stress. Um, is voice notes.
Mm.
So something that I started doing, I did this for myself first, loved it, and I started teaching it to some of my clients, and they've been liking it too. And that is when you're feeling good, record a voice note to yourself as
Mm.
if your best friend, or if you're a parent, your daughter, we're going through the same struggles. What advice would you give them? Because like you said at the beginning of this call, we are our own worst critics. We rip ourselves apart. We talk to ourselves in a way that we would never tolerate from any other human being. And we
Right.
certainly wouldn't tolerate that sort of language towards your kid, right? And so you look at that and you go, okay, if my son or daughter were in the same situation, what kind of advice would you give them? You'd probably be like, hey, I know times are tough right now. I know it feels like you're being overwhelmed. There's a million things to think about. You have a million things to do, and there's not enough time in the day to get it done. And I know it's really hard to fire an arrow straight when the winds of the storm are rough. But at the end of the day, 20 years down the road, I'm not going to care what I weighed on May 16th, 2024.
Right.
So is it worth getting this frustrated at right now? Is it worth giving in the towel, knowing that that's really that's the only way I could possibly quote unquote fail is if I stop trying.
Right. Yeah.
And just like, and like, cause another client of mine who really loves who was really into big and fasting, she was getting frustrated, her family was getting frustrated, and so so one of the questions I asked her was like, well, do you want to go the rest of your life never having breakfast with your son again?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
instantly gave up fasting. She's like, that sounds awful. But it's like she's never sat there and thought about it. She's like, oh, I'm literally sacrificing family health just to starve. That's
Right.
the right. And so it's those voice notes was a huge one, because then it's like, again, that really helped me and my negative self-talk and like my inner voice, because when I started feeling those frustrations and the desire to go eat the foods that we don't want to overindulge in, I would sit there and just re-listen to the recording and be like, oh, got it, I'm
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
now I can again make the conscious decision. Am I good? Am I just do I actually want it? Yes, cool, I'm still gonna have it. If I don't
Right.
want it, cool, don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the intentionality side of it is really, it's such, it's just such a big piece of the puzzle that we live in a world of just autopilot,
Mm-hmm.
and the intention becomes way less in the forefront. And again, it doesn't mean that we're going to get it right every time, but if we can be aware of the actions and the choices that we make more often than not, around everything that we do. Like, do we fly off the handle at our kids every time they frustrate us? Like, okay, maybe is it every time, or is it when I'm effing hungry? Like, yeah, that makes sense, like just the awareness things puts a whole new perspective on like how we go through our days.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to take the time to actually like slow down a little bit
Yep.
periodically and reflect. And it doesn't mean look, I support meditation. I'm not, I struggle to sit still. It's not going to
Yep.
happen really,
Yep.
but I can lay down for 5 minutes with my feet up the wall and breathe. I can do that. That's something that I can do, right? Maybe that's something that you can do. Whoever, like, what are the little things that you can incorporate to make your world a tiny bit better each day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Man, if we're talking about stress, we could go on for probably like another
I
4 hours if
I
we
know,
wanted.
I know. I super, super appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this, and all of you that are still watching or that watching this. Just thank you for taking the time. Thank you for just sharing this space and your energy with us. And Chris, thank you for sharing your energy and your space with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure they got a lot out of this. Speaking of which, what were your biggest takeaways? What are the things that you learned? What are the things you're going to implement? One of the things that happens a lot is a lot of people will consume content like this, and then they'll fall into the trap of cool information acquired, but they won't take action on it. So my challenge for you is to, in the comments of this video, just simply type one thing that you want to start implementing and changing, and start to actually work on, actually make that commitment, one thing, right? And try to make it last as little as possible. When we overcommit something that might a new thing, it's very easy to be like, cool, I'm going to do 6 workouts a week. It's like, okay, you're
You're
currently
not
doing
working out at all
one.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
let's
Yeah.
let's start with 2, something that's a little bit more
Yeah.
realistic that you can commit to, because again, we tend to overcommit, and we also fall into that all or nothing trap. So If I can't commit to 6, why do any, right? So let's just pick one thing. We just pick one thing to work on it, schedule it, set alarms, timers, reminders, get friends involved. But whatever one thing is that really stood out to you that you're like, okay, that feels the most realistic that I can commit to, start there. And then come back to this video, pick a new, rewatch it, be like, oh, you know what? That one sounds pretty good. And then so on and so forth. Don't overcommit, pick one thing, but actually try to take the action on this, right? With that being said, thank you so much, Claire. I will, if any questions do pop up, we should do a round 2 and just do a full Q&A.
Yeah, I would love that. That's amazing. I love
All
it.
right. You have
All
yourself
right.
a
Well, y'all have a
wonderful
great
day.
night. Thank you so much, Chris.
Take care.
Bye.